Martin Luther King Jr. was an extraordinary man. He was one of the leaders of the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King was born in Alabama, a segregated area. Segregation was a common thing in the South. There were segregated schools, movie theaters, restrooms, restaurants, and so much more. Buses were the worst. Whites got to sit in the front of the bus while the blacks had to sit in the back. Blacks and whites were not allowed to sit in the same row on a bus. African Americans didn't do much to fight against segregation. Martin, however, changed that. Martin later found out he was an excellent speaker. He used that skill to motivate thousands to fight for their rights. His speeches encouraged people to not give up, to keep trying no matter what.
Martin and others finally took action to stop segregation when Rosa Parks was arrested for not giving up her seat to a white man. After Rosa's arrest, a local leader of the NAACP named E.D. Nixon contacted King, suggesting that African Americans no longer ride the city buses until the segregation law was abolished. King agreed, and the boycott was decided to begin on Monday, December 5th. That morning, the 6 o'clock bus rolled by. There was not one person on the usually crowded bus. African American leaders knew the boycott would have to last more than one day in order for the boycott to be effective. They decided to form a group to decide future plans. It was called the Montgomery Improvement Association, MIA. City officials did everything they could to end the boycott without abolishing the segregation law. The boycott continued into the next year. On January 21st, 1956, city leaders announced to the press that a compromise settlement had been reached.
The announcement was printed in the local newspaper, but there was no such settlement. This settlement continued segregating seats, but called for bus drivers to be more courageous to African Americans. Leaders of the MIA told ministers to tell their parishioners that the settlement was phony and to continue their boycott. City officials decided to try to end the boycott by harassing African American motorists. Police stopped cars driven by African Americans and gave them tickets for trial or complimentary false traffic violations. King himself was stopped in January 26 for exceeding the speed limit, but he was driving well under the limit. King was taken to jail until bail was arranged. He had never been in jail before. It would not be his last. There were threats to King's safety. He received hate letters and harassing phone calls. Even though he kept getting threatened, King still kept the boycott going. About 90 MIA leaders, including King, were arrested and found guilty of violating the anti-boycott law.
They were sentenced to pay fines, but the boycott still continued. The boycott went on throughout the summer. Special car pools took African Americans to and from work in station wagons. Some who walked to work were beaten by angry whites or hit with bricks and garbage. In September, the auto insurance policies of many of the MIA station wagons were canceled. Private cars had to be used for weeks until the MIA obtained new insurance coverage. In late October, the city claimed that the bus company had an exclusive right to provide all mass transit in Montgomery. It said that MIA's carpool was a form of mass transit and violated the right. King and other MIA leaders went to court on Tuesday, November 13th. In that late morning that day, a reporter approached King with some good news. The United States Supreme Court ruled that bus segregation in Montgomery was illegal. The ruling would take effect as soon as the court order was formally delivered in Montgomery in a few days. However, on the same day, a judge in Montgomery declared that MIA's carpool was illegal. It didn't matter since the Supreme Court decision overruled the Montgomery decision, but there was one more delay. The city of Montgomery was able to ask the Supreme Court to reconsider the decision. Since the carpool was now legally banned, African Americans had to scramble around for rights to work while the decision was being reconsidered. Finally, on Monday, December 17, the Supreme Court rejected the city's last attempt to stop the order. United States Marshals served the order in Montgomery around noon on December 20th. After more than a year, the boycott was finally over.